Now here is the risk that the Browns had to take with I love you, Cleveland. And I love you, Ohio. And a very pleasant welcome to this week's version of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network, brought to you by FanDuel. Great to have you aboard. I'm Bruce Drennan along with Ryan Smith. We are going to be featuring the one and only Mark Lawrence today for our pro and college preview. His new magazine is out. Mark has been featured on our show since we began. I've been affiliated with him on various shows and assignments over the decades. He's renowned and one of the top handicappers in the country. We'll pick his brain on the pros and the college ranks, and we'll zoom in on our Cleveland Browns, that's for sure. Hi, Ryan. How you doing this week?
I'm doing really well, Bruce. As you mentioned, Mark Lawrence is coming on the program. You know, Bruce, you've had some tremendous guests on this show, but I got to admit, I think Mark is my favorite.
He's just a wealth of knowledge, no question about it. Well, the Guardians lost to Arizona despite Jose's 26 home run, gets his 65th and 66th RBIs of the season. The Guards couldn't hold the lead, and Tim Herron got the loss by rendering 2 earned runs on a hit and a walk in the 7th inning. That was the difference, despite Austin Hedges' RBI single in the 8th to bring the team within 1. They'll conclude the series today by starting this young phenom, Parker Messick. He's one of the highly touted prospects in the Guardians organization. This year, a AAA, 5-6 record, 3.47 ERA. He's got 119 strikeouts in 98 and 2/3 innings. So we look forward to seeing how he fares in his major league debut. As far as the playoffs, obviously 9.5 games, I had said almost 2 months ago, that's just too tall of a mountain to climb. However, the wild card is certainly within reach. Even though Kansas City has overtaken the Guardians, they are 2.5 games out of the wild card, with the Guardians presently going into today's action as we tape this show, 3 games out. The New York Yankees, Boston Red Sox, and Seattle Mariners are the 3 teams ahead of Cleveland. Although it's doable, Ryan, not the division crown, even with 6 games left with Detroit. That would take a miracle to come back from that deficit. But the wild card is still doable, but boy, they got to play really good ball here going down the stretch.
Man, Bruce, as we're getting closer to October, boy, do these games mean something more. You mentioned the Kansas City Royals overtaking the Guardians. I think if we would have said that a week ago, I wouldn't have believed you. 8-2 in their last 10. I don't want to say the Atlanta Braves ruined the Guardians' chances of making the playoffs, but certainly if you get swept by the Arizona Diamondbacks, oh, Bruce, it might be all but over.
Yeah, and the schedule after this series with Arizona, 3 at Texas, 3 at home against Tampa Bay, and 3 against the Seattle Mariners. They're obviously a playoff contender. And then we enter the month of September with 3 at Boston, an obvious playoff contender, 4 at Tampa Bay, 4 at home against Kansas City, 3 against the Chicago White Sox in Cleveland. And then we have 3 at Detroit, September 16th through the 18th, 4 at Minnesota, and 3 at home against Detroit, the 23rd through the 25th, before we conclude with 3 against the Texas Rangers. It's doable, but it's going to be tough. All right, when we come back, we're going to take a look at the Cleveland Browns. The quarterback for the first game of the season has been named by Coach Stefanski. That's next on Bonus Time. Big Play Sports.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Smart Choice Windows, energy-efficient products at an affordable price. Visit smartchoicewindows.com today.
All right, well, the Browns have named their starting quarterback for Week 1 against the Cincinnati Bengals, and to no one's surprise, it will be the veteran Joe Flacco, following the debut of Dylan Gabriel in preseason game number 2, and I thought he did some good things. Obviously, the opening drive was impressive. He made some nice throws. There were some mistakes there. He threw into coverage, which resulted in that pick for the touchdown, but overall, Gabriel did impress, I think, and there were some positives enough to move forward. But no surprise, Ryan, that Flacco is named the starting QB.
Yeah, I thought Dylan Gabriel was actually pretty decent, all things considered. Strong arm, as he was touted to be. It looks like he, puts all of it into it when he throws because he is a little bit young or smaller in the stature. But I thought overall he played pretty well. But yes, Joe Flacco, the obvious answer here. Now the question, Bruce, is how long is that leash for Joe Flacco? How long are they going to give Joe Flacco until they realize the season's in the gutter and they need to put in one of these rookies? Hopefully that's later than sooner. And I do think Week 1, Bruce, against the Cincinnati Bengals is actually a winnable game. Now, will they do that? Well, I suppose that's up to Joe Flacco.
Yeah, and of course, you've got Pickett still. They're going to carry the 4 quarterbacks.
I think
all
they will.
indications are they're going to carry all 4.
I think they will, Bruce. I mean, if you're 0-3 with Joe Flacco, 0-4, and you're not ready to really thrust in one of those rookies, you got the London game, I believe it's Week 5. You don't want to start a rookie out there. I could see him flipping it to to Pickett until we get maybe to that bye week around Week 10.
What'd you think of the signing of Bond now that he's been cleared of the sexual assault charges?
I mean, it's a need. Exactly what it is. It's a need. I don't know the last time the Browns had a vertical threat that actually scared and stretched out defenses, and Isaiah Bond is supposed to be that guy. I believe a lot of people had him as a 3rd-round pick. Obviously, the allegations made him go undrafted, and I guess he'll fit in right here in Cleveland because, well, we have a lot of those cases in Cleveland, don't we, Bruce?
Did Strong make a good enough case for himself to make this team and be impactful?
I think because of Quinshon Judkins and his future uncertain with the Cleveland Browns, yet to sign a rookie deal, I think so. I think Jerome Ford, Dylan Sampson, and Pierre Strong are going to be the 3 run with.
Well, we shall see, but it certainly is now right around the corner. Flacco will start in the so-called dress rehearsal, the last preseason game against the Los Angeles Rams, just to get his feet wet, a little bit of reps in live action before we start the season here in Cleveland against the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, we can hardly wait. When we come back, we'll welcome the one and only Mark Lawrence, editor-publisher of the Playbook, playbooksports.com. We'll dive into the Browns and the upcoming NFL season and then the colleges. That's next on Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Pure AV, luxury home automation. Experience your dream smart home by visiting pureavcorp.com.
I love you, Menor Nissan. Hi, Bruce Drennan here from my good friends at Menor Nissan. Ray Sminchak, the whole staff. As you know, I've been doing a lot of our shows down in Florida, just returned. Great to be back on the home confines of our beautiful studios here at Burke Lakefront Airport for Big Play. But I got to tell you, I drove my Nissan Rogue from Menor Nissan down to Florida, had the rack up on top with extra luggage. It was absolutely the most splendid, beautiful ride. Just as smooth as could be. My wife also drives a Rogue. We rotated driving down there and back, but I just can't recommend it any more so to you. Get on out there, test drive a Rogue or a Murano or any of the other great products that they have out there at Menor Nissan. Don't forget, they're now in partnership with Infinity of Akron and Infinity of Beechwood. Check those great vehicles out as well. Service department is absolutely fantastic. Went back to the dealership to get maintenance after that long drive down there and back. And give them a call. Set up an appointment. Of course, check out their website at menornissan.com. That's menornissan.com. I love you, Menor Nissan. It gives me great delight to welcome back to our show the one and only Mark Lawrence, the editor-publisher of the Playbook, playbooksports.com, his newest edition of his 2025 football preview guide, which I'm showing you right now on camera, has Jalen Hurts featured on the cover this year. Mark, it's great to have you back on the show. Welcome, my friend.
It's my pleasure, Bruce, as always, to be back with you, back in the saddle, as they say, with the football season coming right up next door. The pig is in the air.
Mark and I go way, way back. When I first came to Cleveland in the spring of '78, we established contact, and he's originally from Cleveland. He's been based in Miami now for many, many years, but nationally renowned handicapper, and I have featured him on and off throughout all the decades that I've been on the air. We wanted to get Mark on before we start the pro and college season to kind of give you a preview of his football preview. Highly recommend that you get it. Again, playbooksports.com. This is an encyclopedia, which I'm showing you here, of football knowledge, statistics, opinions, you name it. Everything is in there. Mark, the previous segment before we had you on the air, I was talking about the Browns, and I do want to start with the Browns. I was very critical of passing on Hunter. My feeling was an athlete like this comes around once every 10, 13 years. And how many touchdowns is this defensive lineman going to score? We need weapons, and maybe it'll turn out okay. But your thoughts on that and the Browns draft to start with?
Well, I was like you, Bruce. I was a little bit disappointed when they let Hunter pass by, but I can understand the rationale completely. Browns have a lot of holes to fill, and I think they needed to do just that rather than focusing in on one superstar. I don't know if one superstar would have really helped the situation immediately. They're sort of rebuilding for the future here, if you will. And I think they did it the right way. I think they had an outstanding draft. Hunter aside, just the fact that who they drafted, they were all very, very wise choices in the sense, even to go down as far as Shedeur Sanders at number 5, which was an absolute steal. So I think all in all, the Browns did a good job in the draft. I don't think we're going to realize or see anything immediately, but we're going to end up being a lot better off 2 or 3 years from now than we are at the end of the conclusion last year.
Why do you think Sanders fell that low?
I think from what I understand, everybody that I've talked to, he's been kind of a difficult person to engage with. The media, as far as they're concerned, the scouts, they talk with them, the coaches, the general managers. He doesn't engage all that well. And I think a little bit of it is that I heard a couple of interviews with him afterwards. He's not, he doesn't speak fluidly. It's the best that I can put that. But I think what he's doing here right now is very, very impressive. And more importantly, he's doing good things off the field. He got in a little bit of trouble early on with the speeding incidents and so forth and whatnot, but he's doing a lot of real good things for the community off the field. And personally, I think he's going to be a real keeper and a stud. I think he was an excellent draft pick.
Let me ask you this pertaining to the draft pick they got from Jacksonville. I have said that if the Browns are thinking that draft pick combined with their own next year's draft is to get the quarterback of the future, then one question, why do you take 2 quarterbacks in this draft? But even further, I don't necessarily believe that pick from Jacksonville will be a high one because this is do or die for Trevor Lawrence. No longer can they give the Urban Meyer excuse. This is it for him. He's got a great running back in ETN. Now he has Hunter, this unbelievable weapon. That's a winnable division. The weakest division of the 4 in the AFC. Your thoughts on those comments I just made?
The weakest division is most likely, I'm going to say again, the South. Largely because it's been weak to begin with, and I don't see anybody in the South really reversing direction this football season. A lot is anticipated for Jacksonville, but it's time that Trevor Lawrence steps up and shows the goods. Now, whether he's going to be able to do that or not, whether or not Hunter is going to be able to help him along the way remains to be seen, but I think the South is the most susceptible of all the 4 divisions.
So, do you think that because they drafted the 2 quarterbacks this year, that they still may go in that direction? Because as you know better than anybody, next year's class is enriched with quarterbacks. A kid from LSU, South Carolina, let alone Manning.
Well, there's a lot of talk about whether or not Manning's going to come out, and he's being advised not to, by his family and everybody that's close to him. We'll see whether or not that pans out that way. But it is a much, much deeper class next year than it was last. The Browns knew that they were in a quarterback hole, a situation, starting with Sanders, everything else, even reverting to the point that they had to re-sign Joe Flacco. And I think that just speaks volumes, the fact that they had to re-sign a 40-year-old quarterback to be their quarterback this football season. So they needed help. They needed something along the way. And that's the reason I think they reached for Dillon and for Sanders, who both have spectacular, strong arms. And I think both will be NFL football quarterbacks. The question is, will both of them be on the roster come September?
The division is brutal. I mean, if Cincinnati gives Burrow any kind of defensive support, We already know he can lead that team to the Super Bowl. Baltimore's Baltimore with Jackson, and obviously Pittsburgh. My goodness, they could put me in at quarterback and have a good chance of beating the Browns.
I wouldn't go that far, Bruce, but I understand what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. Let alone the conference with Kansas City, Buffalo. I think the Chargers will be removed. Your take will be improved.
Well, you're talking about improved division or improved team?
Improve the whole conference. The Browns have got a tall mountain to climb, not only in this division, but the conference.
Well, here's the way I'm looking at the conference, Bruce, and I think it's as simple as this. All you need to do is look at the odds on the most valuable player in Vegas, what they'll be right now. The two leading odds on most valuable player are Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. They tower over the NFC as far as quarterbacks are concerned. And I think that's where it all starts and where it all ends. So between Jackson and Allen, I think you've got your two teams that are projected and likely will be in the AFC Championship game. Whichever team is, I think, playing the best defense at that particular point will likely win in advance. But right now, Baltimore looks to me like the team to beat.
You think Kansas City may take a step down?
I do, Bruce, and for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think that West Division is rather salty. Number two, they have this Super Bowl loser target on their back this year. And that isn't just something we talk about and we try to make a case for it. It's a fact. If you look at Andy Reid in his career in the National Football League as a head coach, the two times that he's lost a Super Bowl, his teams have really struggled the following season as a Super Bowl losing team. They're going to be targeted again this year. And the bottom line to me here also is their statistics are not worthy of being Super Bowl caliber. They win more games, more one-score games than any team in the league. That can only continue to keep happening so long. Statistically, they're almost even in the stats every year, it seems to be. I think it ends up biting Kansas City this year. I don't think they win their division, and I'm almost certain they're not going to make it back to the Super Bowl.
Wow. Mark Lawrence with us, of course, editor-publisher of the Playbook, playbooksports.com. So what are your expectations for the Browns before we move on?
Well, let me say this. I'm fresh back out of Vegas. I was there for 2 weeks, entering into all these contests out there, these NFL football contests, and bumped into a lot of smart, sharp people there. And there's people out there that, the sharps, they like the Cleveland Browns, okay? The public doesn't. We in Cleveland, obviously, we do. But there's reasons the sharps like the Cleveland Browns. Number one, there's a thing statistically that they did last year. They were worst in the league last year in net turnovers. Every time a team has finished last in the league in net turnovers, every time they've improved their win-loss record the following football season. That's only a law of averages, a return to the norm, and it will most likely happen to Cleveland again this year. I love what they did in the draft. You can go all the way down through the seventh and final picks of the draft. Everybody they drafted was a plus coup by the Cleveland Browns. I like that particular part of it. And I only hope that somewhere along the way, the Browns will be able to develop a wide receiver alongside Jerry Jeudy. If they can do just that, it doesn't matter whether it's Sanders or whether it's Dylan, Gabriel. I think the Browns will take a step up. Now, will they get out of the cellar this year? That's a question. And it'll probably only happen because Pittsburgh regresses. And I do see Pittsburgh regressing this year. I'm not a big Aaron Rodgers fan. I don't like 40-year-old quarterbacks that are coming off an Achilles heel injury anytime. It doesn't matter what their name is. So I think the team the Browns have targeted to chase and perhaps surpass in this division will be the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think it'll go right down to the wire as to whether Cleveland or Pittsburgh will not be the cellar dweller this year.
That's a brutal schedule the Browns have, Mark.
Yes, it is. It is a tough schedule, but became a really stout Kevin Stefanski fan. I think he's doing a real admirable job with this football program here. And between you and I and the fence post, he's awesome as an underdog, Bruce. Whenever the Browns dress up as underdogs,
right.
It's time to cash the pay window, okay?
Yeah.
And they'll be underdogs quite a bit this year. So, they catch my fancy that particular way. But I think the Browns will indeed be an improved football team this year.
Before we switch to college in the next segment, you've got Jalen Hurts on your cover of this year's version of the Mark Lawrence Playbook 2020. 2025 football preview guide. Can anybody beat them in the NFC?
Well, it's going to be difficult because, if you go back and you look at the job Nick Sirianni's done with the Eagles, he's probably the most under the radar winningest coach in the National Football League. He doesn't get any credit for what's happened there at Philadelphia, and all he does is wins and win Super Bowl rings. I think it's going to be real, real difficult. There's no stick out team to knock them down, but I will say this. That you remember that the what happens in the NFC East, teams do not repeat. It's been 20 years since there's been a repeat division champion in the NFC East. That would be Philadelphia taking a step back this year. And if they take a step back this year, it would likely because Dallas becomes alive this football season, or Philadelphia is not playing well. So I think the NFC is up for grabs this year, Philadelphia being the best team. And I am not at all a Detroit Lions fan. I think Detroit is going to lay an egg this year as well.
Wow, that's interesting too. And they open up at Green Bay. Dallas is at Philadelphia, KC at the LA Chargers, and Baltimore at Buffalo, let alone Cincinnati visiting Cleveland. So what a way to start the season, huh, Mark?
Unbelievable. I believe they're going to find a team out of the West. San Francisco 49ers, I think, are going to be sneaky good this year. You don't hold Kyle Shanahan down too long, especially after coming off a performance last year. So I think San Francisco will be in the NFC title game, and it remains to be seen who they'll be playing.
Mark Lawrence, editor-publisher of The Playbook, playbooksports.com. Again, here's a look at it. I strongly recommend that you get this publication. It is an encyclopedia. We shift to college ball with Mark in just a minute on Bonus Time with Drennan. Big Play.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Lake Spur Marketing, connecting your brand to the right customers. Visit lakespurmarketing.com today.
My old friend Mark Lawrence, editor-publisher of The Playbook, playbooksports.com, joining us for our college and pro football preview show. Obviously, Mark, as we enter this college season, I first have to get your reaction to the expansion to a 12-team playoff. Your thoughts on how it went last year.
I thought it went real well, Bruce. It afforded, obviously, Ohio State a chance, and they capitalized to win a national championship. They didn't even win the Big Ten, but yet they won the national championship. So because things opened up, it opened up opportunities for teams like the Buckeyes and everybody else. But I think we're also just at a little bit of a pit stop here because it's 12 now. It's going to expand, Bruce. I think between now and the next 4 or 5 years, we're going to be a 24-team playoff. Only because, or largely because, it's all about the money. And, the more teams there are, the more involvement there is, the more money there is. That's what it is all about college football these days, Bruce. You know better than anybody. The NIL transfer portal is killing college football. And then what they're doing is they're trying to capitalize every bit of dollar that they can pick up.
It's funny, doing my prep this morning before coming in here to work to do the show with you today, Mark, I see that already the NCAA is considering a 28-team playoff format, eliminating the conference championships. I'll have to digest and research more if I would be for a 28-team playoff, but because of the diminishing importance of the regular season. However, I would certainly advocate eliminating the conference championships, even if they stay in the 12-team format. I don't see the point.
No, it's just an extra game. And, like take Ohio State last year, whether they win it, whether they lose it, as long as they get into the playoffs is all that counts. You get your foot in the door and anything can happen once the party begins. So I can understand why they would think about eliminating the conference championship game. The only thing is, to college football purists, all of everything that happened that built up to this point goes out the window. There's no more defending national or defending conference champion. There's no Alabama that had won the conference 8 years in a row, things like that. But we're in the here and the now, Bruce. I mean, we have to accept, and I agree with you. I think we're going to expand, and I think we're going to lose these conference championship games.
What do you think, within a couple of years?
I think within a couple of years. I think we're going to see after this year, there's going to be a lot of clamoring for it to grow from 12 to maybe 16 teams. That might not be next year, but the year after that, then to 24. And you never know what happens after that once the money starts rolling.
Right. Nick Saban retired from college coaching A lot of people think, because his quote when he testified in front of Congress, he said, hey, I used to go into a family's living room and talk about ethics and developing a young person into a young man. Now you walk in and first question, how much money do I get? It's a whole different world. I had Chuck Kyle, one of the most distinguished high school football coaches in the country for many years on the show last week, and he thinks the NIL is has already partially and is in the process of destroying amateur athleticism. Your thoughts?
There's no question about that. I echo Coach Kyle's thoughts exactly, right to the letter here. It's gone to the point, Bruce, where they're mimicking the National Football League. They're hiring general managers to run college football programs. General manager going out and securing the talent, going out and buying that talent. It's ridiculous. You have college sports. Bruce, getting an education doesn't mean a lick to these kids these days. It doesn't mean a thing. A scholarship doesn't matter. All that matters is the NIL money. And something has to happen to it much, much sooner than later here. I certainly hope it does, because let me tell you this story. I was in Vegas and I bumped into a kid named B.J. Simons, used to be the quarterback at Texas Tech. And we were talking, we were ending the contest together, and I was asking him about his program. He says, our program has got a big, big, deep, deep pocket, multi-billion-dollar backer, and he's paid a lot of money to bring a lot of talent into this program this year. That's college football we're talking about, Bruce. We're not talking about Jimmy Haslam and the Cleveland Browns. We're talking about a college football program doing that. And I think it's really a sad day in the world of college sports.
Your thoughts on the giant conferences, the SEC, the Big Ten. Now all you've got left really is the Big 12 and the ACC, and they're diminishing fast. If Clemson were to ever leave, or Florida State were to ever leave the ACC, that's the end of them in football. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it's really sad, Bruce. It's proven to be right now the group of 5 programs that still exist are simply nothing but a minor league grounds for these big conferences. They go out and they raid these minor league conferences. They raid the MAC. They raid the Conference USA, they raid the Sun Belt, and all they do is they buy this talent and bring them in to plug and place and replace. I think it's really sad because we've got 4 major conferences here right now. 1 or 2, obviously, the big boys, the SEC and the Big Ten, but you got like the Big 12. They're going to be kind of mediocre a little bit this year. I don't think there's a stick-out team in the Big 12 conference this year, but we're going to always have this super Power 4 conference unless they all merge into a super conference where you're talking about a 24-32 team conference and you've got a pair of them. Suddenly you've got the National League against the American League like we do in baseball. 2 super conferences clashing head to head. We're going to see that.
Wow. I keep using the example volleyball, baseball, gymnastics, swimming. Rutgers traveling to Washington? UCLA traveling to Maryland? Come on.
Nothing says Big Ten football like UCLA traveling to Maryland, Rutgers going to Washington, Stanford going to Clemson. Come on, man. It doesn't matter, Bruce. It just simply doesn't matter. All that matters is the bottom line and how loud they can ring that cash register. In the meantime, we're left with having to take what they're cramming down our throats and watching these games. We're jonesing for it. We're waiting for college football to begin. But I certainly wish it was a different environment completely.
All right, we'll get into details about what Mark thinks about the upcoming season, the specifics of these teams, what he's expecting. That's next with the one and only Mark Lawrence of Playbook, playbooksports.com. That's next.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Garage Beer. No bitterness, no frills, no IPA, just beer-flavored beer. Find local retailers who sell garage beer near you by visiting drinkgaragebeer.com.
Mark Lawrence with us, editor-publisher of the Playbook. Here it is again, playbooksports.com, your website. Check out this encyclopedia version of 2025, the upcoming football season. Speaking of, Mark, your rankings, coaches poll, AP poll have got Texas number 1. They disagree on 2 and 3. Penn State in the AP, OSU 3rd, and just the opposite in the coaches poll. Your thoughts?
My thought, Bruce, a lot of disrespect for Ohio State in these polls. The AP has them, I think, at either 3rd or 4th. The coaches poll had them 2nd. Not a lot of respect for a defending national champion here. I realize there's changes that are abounding here. quarterbacks, offensive and defensive coordinators for the Buckeyes, so forth and whatnot. But I have never been a big Steve Sarkisian fan. I think you know that. I think he chokes more often than he doesn't. James Franklin, we all know about James Franklin and his inability to win big football games. So if you knock those two teams out of the equation, what's left here, Bruce? It's Ohio State, possibly Clemson, who is going to be a real keeper this year. And I think a sneaky guy this year, Bruce, watch out for Alabama. Kalen DeBoer has a big chip on his shoulder this year.
He also has a lot of pressure on him, Mark.
Yes, he does. And there's no question. But, where he comes from, Bruce, his breeding, everything that's in his DNA, the guy is a winner. And, they're down on him last year because he won only 9 games last year. That's a little bit down for Alabama standards. But they'll be right back where they need to be this year.
Notre Dame had a transfer, one of the backup quarterbacks. I think he went, where'd he go, Syracuse or wherever. So they may have a freshman starting for the Irish in South Bend. Your thoughts on them this year? They really overachieved, I thought, last season under Freeman.
Well, you have to really tip your hat to Marcus Freeman, Bruce. My goodness, look at what he's done with this football program here. He's averaging 11 wins a season. He's gone 29-12 against the point spread, which is really, really warm. People who bet the Irish win with the Irish. The Irish turn to green. He's done a great job with Notre Dame. And it's because he recruits as well as anybody is out there. And he also avoids all of this conference takedown, if you will, because he remains an independent football program. But Notre Dame will be in the running in here this year. I have them as my 6th ranked team going into the season.
Now, you mentioned Clemson. Dabo Swinney probably did less in the portal than a lot of the major schools and powers. Is that still the case? Because I know you're very high on them, and they're the obvious favorite to win the ACC.
Yeah, it's a good point you bring out, Bruce, because Dabo Swinney reluctantly just did not like at all any of this NIL stuff and all this recruiting. He stuck to his guns. He didn't bring any transfers in, and he went out and he recruited. Well, the truth of the matter is recruiting is in the rearview mirror right now. As good as Georgia has been, as good as Alabama has been, it doesn't matter anymore, Bruce. All that matters is what NIL players you're going to bring into the program and how much of a bankroll you have to do just that. So Clemson wised up this year. And what they happen to do this year, Bruce, is they are the #1 ranked team in all of college football, FBS football, in terms of returning production rankings. They rank #1. And the reason I'm calling that out is this. If you look at the last 2 years of the teams that rank #1 in returning production rankings, those programs went 20-7, okay? Straight up and against the point spread. Clemson is going to be a horse to beat because there aren't many good horses in the ACC, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if Clemson doesn't play in the college football championship game this year.
And let me touch on the Big 12, which of course had to really regroup, especially with the merger of Washington, UCLA, Oregon going to the Big 10, USC. Anybody noteworthy there? I guess Arizona State is considered the favorite. Do you agree with that?
Well, both of the Arizonas each bring back 17 or more returning starters, which is really a good starting point for them. But my team in this side of this conference is Texas Tech. I referred to them earlier in my conversation with BJ Simons. The fact that this team is loaded, they've got 20 returning starters because they bought a lot of players from other programs, but they are absolutely loaded as Texas Tech. And Joey McGuire, the head coach, all he ever does is nothing but win, Bruce. He just wins football games. I think I make Texas Tech the team to beat in the Big 12 this year, if for no other reason. The Big 12 is down handily this football season.
All right, let's concentrate on the Big 10. How much of the NCAA coming down on Michigan is that going to affect their program this year, if at all?
Well, it's going to affect their program, Bruce. First of all, when your head coach has been handcuffed to begin the football season, that doesn't bode well. All these sanctions that happened to them is going to really hurt them in the long run down the end. But you know what I thought was a real joke, Bruce? All this money that they were fined, you weigh that against how much money the football program generates in revenue. The money they were fined is like the tax on the revenue that they generate. $50 million, that means a lot to most programs. To Michigan, it's the tax on the program here. I think that they're going to be okay this year. I think they'll be a bowl team, but I don't think they're going to be in any way, shape, or form in contention for the college football national championship.
How about the Oregon Ducks now that Gabriel's with the Browns?
Well, they do a lot of great job of recruiting at that football program, Bruce. But I'm going to say this about Gabriel. The kid is a great quarterback as far as quarterbacking goes. He happened to play at three other colleges, and there's a reason that he played at three other colleges because they all wanted him and they all paid the money for him to go to those programs, and he delivered the goods at every stop that he made. So now the question is, can they plug and play in place of Dylan Gabriel? I think they'll ultimately end up being the second best team in the Big Ten this year. And they have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder here last year because they won the conference championship, but didn't make it to the championship game.
How about sleepers like an Indiana or an Illinois who both made great strides a year ago?
Well, I'll say I'll put my Texas Tech right at the top of that sleeper list because they come out of that conference that's really, really down this particular football season here. Other teams that I might look at, the Baylor Bears, I think they're going to be the team that's going to challenge inside the Big 12 conference this year. They've had a ton of returning ability and starters coming back this football season here. I think Southern Cal, Lincoln Riley is on a real big hot seat. People aren't realizing that yet, but they will if he doesn't win this football season. And I believe he's going to make some noise this year after finally making the transition to the Big 10 last year. I got to make them a sleeper. And also inside the Big 10, look out for Nebraska. Matt Rule has a nice football program there, and Matt Rule does wonders with football programs in college football in his third and fourth year with football programs here. I think Nebraska is knocking at the Big Ten door here as well.
You didn't react to my comments about Illinois or Indiana. Why?
Well, and those are great points. They both bring back an abundance of returning ability and starters, and you have to acknowledge that. What I don't like about Illinois is they were outgained more often than they weren't last year. They won games with smoke and mirrors, what I call that, and that usually ends up biting you the following football season. You pay the price, you pay the piper the next year. And Indiana was that upstart football program here that caught everybody by surprise and made it a long, long way. Again, I live more often not in regression, return to the norm. And I think it happens to either both of those programs or at least one of the two programs this year.
All right, let me conclude by asking you about three Southeastern Conference schools. I'll start with Kelly at LSU.
Well, he always does a great job with recruiting, and he doesn't very seldom get out-coached in football games. And I think he's also a little bit moderately on a hot seat here, Bruce. He's ranked in the top 10 in the polls here this football season here. But they don't pay him those big bucks to be ranked in the top 10. They pay him to win the SEC, and he hasn't done that here so far this year. And you know what the conference is like. He's got so many other teams in there, Alabama, Georgia, that are much, much better than his program is this particular season here, even Texas. But I think he's going to be sneaky good, and he'll be the kind of team this year that nobody will want to play this football season here. And I think he'll still win his usual 10 or 11 games this season.
How about Tennessee? They had a good season last year, obviously making the playoffs. They were trounced by Ohio State, but still a good year.
They did, but this is another team I see in the SEC that regresses this year, Bruce, because they're not coming back with a wealth of returning ability as far as production goes and returning starters and everything like that. And you also kind of go backwards after you surprised one year. I think you go back the next year. Too much pressure on Tennessee to repeat this year. I think they take a step back.
And finally, the Georgia Bulldogs.
This is a team you have to watch out for, Bruce, here. Everybody puts them down because they slipped a year last football season here. But they still, you look at all those recruiting rankings here, Bruce, nobody out-recruits Kirby Smart. And Kirby Smart has a big, big chip on his shoulder here this year. The only thing that he warns us about is he's awfully young, but awfully young means he's got a lot of good young talent there. I think Georgia is the real sleeper team in the SEC this football season here. And I think if Alabama doesn't win this conference, I think Georgia does.
Wow, over Texas. That's interesting, too.
Yes.
Here it is again, the playbook, Mark Lawrence's 2025 football preview, both college and pro. If you think you just got a lot of info from Mark during the interview here on our show, you should dive in to this Bible right here. So, Mark, I can't thank you enough. I've talked to Mark off the air about possibly coming back maybe middle of the season, see where we're at in both college and pros. And we look forward to that very much, old friend. Thank you again.
It'll be my pleasure, Bruce. I look forward to coming back, and we'll readjust everything in the middle of the football season, and we'll see where everybody's headed. Thanks a lot for the show.
The one and only Mark Lawrence. All right, the Ask Bruce segment is next. Bonus time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network.
The Big Play Sports Network is brought to you by Fairway Ford, the largest inventory of new Ford trucks, the lowest pricing, and same hometown level of service. Visit fairwayfordohio.com today.
Once again, we welcome and thank all the good folks at FanDuel as a title sponsor of Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network, as well as a lot of other shows here on our network as we enter the Ask Bruce segment to conclude this week's show. Go ahead.
Alrighty, Bruce. Well, we know if the Cleveland Guardians are going to make the playoffs, one of those teams have to drop out of the wild card spot. Now, this viewer wants to know, hey, Bruce, which of those three teams are the most likely to fall out of that wild card?
This weekend, the New York Yankees play the Boston Red Sox. That'll be a bloodbath, as we all know. They hate each other. I think a lot will depend on the games between those two teams coming down the stretch here as we conclude the month of August and enter September, where they will meet again. Boston has really reemerged as a contender. Their pitching's been good with, obviously, Crochet, but Giolito has really given them a boost, and so has Bale. So I think Boston is a team to watch, although the Yankees now with Gil back, certainly Rodon, Fried got into a little bit of a slump, but he's so good. He could rebound too. I think that's a real key. Seattle seems to be for real. They made all those moves before the deadline, and they're setting their sights for the divisional championship. Hey, maybe it's Houston that will fall from grace. Who will see?
Alrighty, hey, Bruce, if you had to grade Stephen Vogt's overall managerial season so far, there's a lot to go left, of course, September, but as of right now, how would you grade it?
I think it's pretty good because if they are indeed to make it as a wild card team, I think he may get consideration for manager of the year. I don't think he can win it this year like he did a year ago, but he could get some votes and some consideration in the top three. I could see that happening, but I think overall very good considering, hey, we knew before we started the season we weren't going to have Bieber. As it turns out, we traded him to Toronto. Obviously, there's been the injuries, the suspensions with Clase and Ortiz. Overall, I give him, a good passing grade.
Alrighty, last one, Bruce. We'll flip it over to college football. We talked a little about this with Mark. Hey, Bruce, do you find it unusual that Ohio State is ranked number 3 to open the season despite winning the national championship?
Well, if you would ask Ryan Day over a cold beer, he would be glad about that, rather than having the burden, the pressure of being number 1. He's not even looking at that. He's just getting his team ready for the first game of the season, which is a whopper against the number 1 ranked Texas Longhorns. What a way to start the college football season. Bring it on. Unfortunately, we have no more to offer you this week because we're out of time. I'm Bruce Drennan. On behalf of Ryan Smith, thanks so much for joining us. Bonus Time with Drennan here on the Big Play Sports Network, brought to you by FanDuel. Look forward to next week's show. We're going to be featuring Lee Owens, the former head coach at Ashland University, who has written a book, former assistant coach at Ohio State in their football program. That will be next week, and then we start the season. Can hardly wait. So until then, as always, so most importantly, you remember, I love you, Ohio. And I love you, Cleveland.